Dr. Tajin stared at the blue planet through the viewing screen of his ship. Earth was small from this distance, but it held so many life forms to study. He pressed his six-fingered hand against the cool glass, his gray skin reflecting in the surface. "Begin landing sequence," he said to the ship's computer. His voice was flat, without emotion. All Nuri spoke this way. Emotions were seen as a weakness on his world. The ship moved silently through Earth's atmosphere. It was night over this part of the planet, perfect for not being seen. Tajin had studied Earth for many years from afar. He knew humans were not ready to meet aliens. They would panic. They would fight. It was more logical to study them in secret. Landing complete, the computer said. Tajin's ship had touched down in a forest clearing. The area was empty of humans, according to his scans. Only one human heat signature appeared, and it was far enough away not to notice him. Tajin prepared his collection tools. The Nuri Collective had sent him to study Earth's animals. They were most interested in how humans kept other animals as pets. This made no sense to the Nuri. Why would one species care for another with no clear benefit? It was not logical. Tajin stepped out of his ship. The earth air was cool against his skin. He could smell pine trees and soil. His scanner pointed him toward a camping area 2 miles away. "There should be domestic animals there," he said to himself. "I will collect one specimen and return." He moved through the forest without making noise. Nuri were natural hunters on their home world, though they now used their skills only for science. As Tajin got closer to the camping spot, he heard a strange sound. It was a soft rumbling noise, coming from near a small tent. Tajin crept closer. In the dim light of a dying campfire, he saw them. A human male was sleeping outside his tent on a cushioned mat. Next to him was a furry animal, a dog, according to Tajin's research. The dog was making the rumbling noise as it slept. Tajin had learned this was called snoring. "Perfect," Tajin whispered. He raised his collection device, a small silver tube that would create a stasis field around the target. It would put the animal to sleep and protect it during transport. He aimed at the dog. Just as he pressed the button, the dog woke up. It looked directly at Tajin with alert eyes. The dog barked once, loudly. The human stirred. "What's wrong, buddy?" The human mumbled, still half asleep. The stasis field shot out, a beam of blue light, but the dog jumped away. The beam hit the ground between the dog and human. To Tajin's surprise, the field expanded and caught both creatures. This was not the plan. The field was only supposed to take one small animal, not a human too. "Error. Error," said the device in Tajin's hand. The human's eyes opened wide as he and the dog began to float inside the blue bubble of light. He tried to scream, but the stasis field was already putting him to sleep. The dog whimpered once before falling silent too. Tajin stood frozen. This was not supposed to happen. Taking humans was forbidden without special permission. It could cause problems. It could alert Earth authorities. But as he watched the human and dog float together in the stasis field, Tajin had a thought. This was actually better than his original plan. Now he could study not just the animal, but the bond between it and its human. "This is an acceptable error," Tajin decided. "I will study them together." He pressed another button on his device. The stasis bubble floated toward him, following as he walked back to his ship. Inside the bubble, the human and his dog floated peacefully, unaware they were about to leave Earth. Tajin's large eyes blinked slowly as he looked at them. "Subject captured," he noted in his recorder. "Beginning transport to orbital laboratory for study of human-animal bonding behaviors." The ship's door closed behind them. Minutes later, it lifted off silently into the night sky, carrying its unexpected passengers to the stars. The human woke slowly. Han Jun blinked and looked around, confused. He was in a room that looked almost like a forest clearing on Earth. There were trees, grass, and even a small stream. But something was wrong. The sky above was not blue. It was a white ceiling with bright lights. "Where am I?" Han said, sitting up quickly. "Maru, where are you?" At the sound of his name, the brown dog came running from behind a fake bush. Maru jumped up and licked Han's face, his tail wagging fast. Han hugged his dog tight, feeling less afraid with his friend near. "What is this place?" Han whispered, looking around more carefully now. He could see walls at the edges of the forest, and there was a clear wall on one side, like a giant window. Beyond it, he could see strange machines and blinking lights. On the other side of the clear wall, Dr. Ta Jin watched the human and dog with great interest. He had created this habitat to match Earth environments from his research. The human and dog had been asleep for 12 hours while his ship returned to the main research vessel orbiting Earth. "Subject is awake," Ta Jin said, speaking into his recorder. "First reaction is to call for the animal companion. Interesting priority." The door behind him opened with a soft hiss. Another Nuri walked in. This one was smaller than Ta Jin, with lighter gray skin. "Dr. Sume," Ta Jin said without looking away from the habitat. "Come observe." Dr. Sume moved to stand beside him. Her large black eyes blinked slowly as she looked at the human and dog. "You captured a human," she said, her voice as flat as his. "This is against protocols." "It was an error that became an opportunity," Ta Jin replied. "Now we can study the bond directly." Sumai tilted her head. "The collective will not approve. Humans are not to be taken. I will return him undamaged when the study is complete," Ta Jin said. "The knowledge gained will justify the protocol breach." Inside the habitat, Han was trying to understand what had happened. The last thing he remembered was camping in the woods with Maru. There had been a strange light, and then nothing until he woke up here. "We've been kidnapped, Maru," he said quietly to his dog. "But by who? And why?" Han walked to the clear wall and placed his hand against it. It was solid and cool. On the other side, he could now see two figures watching him. They were not human. They were tall and thin with gray skin, large heads, and huge black eyes. They had no hair and 6 fingers on each hand. "Aliens," Han whispered, stepping back in shock. "Real aliens." Maru barked at the creatures on the other side of the wall. Not an angry bark, but a curious one. The dog didn't seem scared, just interested. "The animal makes noise at us," Ta Jin noted, "but shows no fear signs. The human shows fear. This matches our understanding of their intelligence levels." Sume moved closer to the glass. "How will you communicate with them?" "I have studied Earth languages," Ta Jin said. "I will speak with the human when he has adjusted to his new environment. First, I want to observe natural behaviors." Ta Jin watched as the human sat down on the ground. The dog came and put its head in the human's lap. The human stroked the dog's fur and spoke softly to it. "See how the human comforts the animal," Ta Jin said. "Yet it appears the animal is also comforting the human. This is the paradox I wish to understand." "Be careful, Ta Jin," Sumai warned. "Direct study of other species can lead to attachment. Remember your training. Stay cold. Stay logical." "I am a scientist," Ta Jin said firmly. "Emotions will not interfere with my work." But as he watched the human and dog sitting together, supporting each other in this strange place, Ta Jin felt something unusual. A small flicker of curiosity. No, it was something more. He quickly pushed the feeling away. "Begin recording brain patterns of both subjects," he ordered the computer. "I want to see how they respond to each other on a neurological level." The computer beeped in response. Ta Jin didn't know it yet, but his own brain patterns were already starting to change. 3 weeks passed. Han Jun and Maru had settled into a routine in their strange new home. Food appeared twice a day from a slot in the wall. Clean water flowed in the small stream. There was even a small shelter that looked like a cabin where they could sleep. Han had tried to find a way out, but there was none. The clear wall was too strong to break. He had shouted at the aliens he sometimes saw watching, but they never responded. After a while, he stopped trying. "At least we're together, Maru," Han said as he threw a stick for the dog to fetch. "They're not hurting us. They're just watching." Maru brought the stick back, dropping it at Han's feet. His tail wagged. For Maru, this strange place wasn't so bad. He had Han, food, and games to play. On the other side of the clear wall, Dr. Tajin had been recording everything. He had filled many data files with notes about the human and dog, how they ate together, how they played, how they slept side by side. 3 weeks of observation complete, Tajin said to his recorder. The bond between subjects remained strong despite the stress of captivity. "Today I will begin direct interaction." Dr. Sumai stood nearby, checking data on a screen. "Be careful," she warned. "Direct contact increases risk of emotional contamination." "I understand the risks," Tajin replied. He picked up a small device and attached it to his wrist. "This translator will help me communicate with the human." Tajin walked to a hidden door in the habitat wall. He pressed his hand to a panel beside it, and the door slid open. He stepped inside the habitat for the first time. Han was sitting under a tree when he heard the strange sound. He turned to see part of the wall opening. One of the gray aliens stepped through. Han jumped to his feet, heart racing. "Maru, come," he called. The dog ran to his side. The alien moved slowly toward them. It was taller than Han by almost a foot. Its 6-fingered hands were empty, held out with palms up. "Do not be afraid, Hanjun," the alien said in a flat voice. "I am Dr. Tajin. I am a scientist." Han's eyes widened. You speak my language. You know my name." "I have studied Earth languages," Tajin explained. "I found your identification in your camping supplies." Han backed away slowly. "What do you want with us? Why did you take us?" "I am studying the relationship between humans and their animal companions," Tajin said. "Your bond with this dog is of scientific interest." While they talked, Maru had been watching the alien carefully. Now, to Han's surprise, the dog walked toward Tajin. Han tried to call them back, but Maru ignored him. "Maru." "No," Han said. "Come back." Tajin watched the dog approach. According to his research, animals should fear unfamiliar beings. But this dog showed no fear. It came closer, sniffing the air. "Your animal approaches me," Tajin said. "Is this normal behavior?" Han looked worried. "Maru is friendly. Too friendly sometimes. He likes everyone." The dog was now directly in front of Tajin. It sat down and looked up at him with bright eyes. Then it raised one paw. "What is this behavior?" Tajin asked. Han couldn't help smiling a little. "He wants to shake hands. It's a greeting." Tajin stared at the raised paw. Slowly, he reached out one 6-fingered hand. The dog placed its paw in Tajin's hand. Tajin felt the soft paw pads against his skin. "Interesting," he said, but inside, he felt something strange. A tiny feeling he had never experienced before. Then the dog did something unexpected. It moved closer and licked Tajin's other hand. Tajin pulled back quickly. "It put its tongue on me." Han nodded. "That's how dogs show they like someone. It's called licking." "Like me?" Tajin repeated the words as if they made no sense. "But it doesn't know me. We have never met before." "Dogs can sense things about people," Han explained. "Maru trusts you for some reason." Tajin looked at his hand where the dog had licked it. The feeling inside him grew stronger. It was warm and confusing. "This requires further study," Tajin said quickly. "I will return tomorrow." He walked back to the hidden door, but before leaving, he looked back at the dog. Maru was watching him, tail wagging slightly. For the first time in his life, Dr. Tajin felt something that had no scientific name in his language. The Nuri had removed such feelings from their culture long ago. Humans called it connection. Days passed. Dr. Tajin visited the habitat every day. He would sit and talk with Han Jun about Earth, asking many questions. Han was still scared, but less so now. Talking helped pass the time, and Tajin had promised they would return to Earth someday. "Why do you care for Maru?" Tajin asked during one visit. "He gives you no clear benefit." Han looked surprised. "Benefit? That's not why people have dogs. Maru is my friend." "Friend." Tajin repeated the word, "but he is not your species." "That doesn't matter," Han said, petting Maru, who lay next to him. "Love doesn't care about species." Tajin's head tilted slightly. "Love. This concept is difficult for my kind to understand." During these talks, Maru always came to sit near Tajin. Sometimes, the dog would place his head on the alien's knee. At first, Tajin would move away. But lately, he had started to let the dog stay there. He even touched the dog's fur once, finding it surprisingly soft. One morning, Tajin arrived at his lab to find Dr. Sume looking concerned. "The animal shows signs of illness," she said. "Its vital signs changed during the night." Tajin went quickly to the viewing wall. Inside the habitat, Han was kneeling beside Maru. The dog lay on its side, breathing fast. It was not moving much. "What are the symptoms?" Tajin asked. "Elevated temperature, irregular heartbeat, reduced appetite," Sumai read from her screen. "The cause is unknown." Tajin felt a strange tightness in his chest. "I must check the animal." "Remember, this is just a test subject," Sumai warned. "If it dies, we can get another." Tajin looked at her sharply. The death of the dog would affect the human. It would change the parameters of the study. "Of course," Sumai said, but she watched Tajin with careful eyes. Han looked up when Tajin entered the habitat. His face showed fear and sadness. "Please," Han said right away. "Maru is sick. Can you help him?" Tajin knelt beside the dog. Maru's eyes were dull, not bright as usual. His nose was dry and warm. "When did this start?" Tajin asked. "Last night," Han said. "He wouldn't eat this morning. He never refuses food." Tajin took out a small device and scanned the dog's body. The readings were not normal, but the cause wasn't clear. "I don't know what's wrong," Tajin admitted. "Our knowledge of Earth animals is limited." "Please," Han said again. Tears formed in his eyes. "I can't lose him. He's all I have." Tajin saw the water falling from Han's eyes. Crying was a human response to extreme emotion. He had read about it, but never seen it before. "Why do you leak water for an animal?" Tajin asked. "Because I love him," Han shouted, his voice breaking. "Don't you understand? He's not just an animal. He's family." Tajin stared at Han, then at Maru. The dog made a small whimpering sound and tried to lick Han's hand, even while sick. Something changed inside Tajin in that moment. A decision that wasn't based on science or logic. "I will help him," Tajin said. For the next 48 hours, Tajin worked without stopping. He ran tests on Maru's blood and tissue. He searched the ship's database for similar illnesses in Earth dogs. Han stayed by Maru's side, only sleeping when he couldn't stay awake any longer. Dr. Sumai watched with growing concern. "You've missed 2 meal cycles," she told Tajin. "This level of effort for a test subject is not rational. The study requires the dog to live," Tajin said, not looking up from his work. "The study, or you?" Sumai asked, but Tajin didn't answer. Finally, Tajin discovered the problem. A bacteria from the habitat's water system was making Maru sick. It was harmless to humans but toxic to dogs. He created a medicine and brought it to the habitat. "Give him this twice a day," Tajin told Han, handing him a small bottle. "He should improve soon." Han took the medicine with shaking hands. "Thank you," he said. "Really, thank you." As Han gave Maru the first dose, the dog's eyes found Ta-Jin. Even sick, Maru's tail moved slightly against the ground. Ta-Jin felt that strange feeling again, stronger now. It was warm and both pleasant and painful at the same time. Outside the habitat later, Sumai was waiting. "I have reported your behavior to the collective," she said. "Your actions show concerning signs of emotional contamination." "My actions were necessary for the study," Ta-Jin replied. But as he walked away, he knew this wasn't entirely true. And for the first time, he didn't care. Maru recovered quickly. Within 3 days, he was running and playing again. His eyes were bright, and his tail wagged constantly. Han Jun smiled more now, relieved that his friend was healthy again. Ta-Jin watched them from his lab. He had not entered the habitat since giving Han the medicine. He needed time to think. The strange feelings inside him were growing stronger. They were not logical. They were not scientific. They were emotions. "This is a problem," he said to himself. Nuri were not supposed to feel emotions. They had moved past such things long ago. Emotions led to mistakes, to weakness. But when he saw Maru running happily, Ta-Jin felt something that might be called joy. It was confusing. The door to the lab opened. Dr. Sumai entered with another Nuri, an older male with darker gray skin. "Dr. Ta-Jin," Sumai said, "the collective has sent Inspector Quan to evaluate your work." Ta-Jin stood straighter. "Inspector, I was not informed of a visit." "That was intentional," Inspector Quan said. His voice was colder than most Nuri. "Dr. Sumai has reported concerning behaviors. The collective is worried about emotional contamination. My work is proceeding as planned," Ta-Jin said. "The human-animal bond is complex. It requires detailed study." Quan looked at the habitat. "You have spent excessive time with the subjects. This is not our way." "I have gathered valuable data," Ta-Jin argued. "The collective has decided," Quan said. "You will complete your current observations within 10 days. Then the human will be returned to Earth, and you will return to Nuri Prime for evaluation." "And the dog?" Ta-Jin asked. "The animal will be kept for further study by other scientists," Quan said. "Separating the pair will provide additional data on bonding loss." Ta-Jin felt a cold feeling in his stomach. Separating them would cause great distress to both subjects. "Yes," Quan agreed. "That is why it is scientifically valuable." After Quan left, Sumai stayed behind. "You have 10 days," she said. "Then you must obey the collective's orders." Ta-Jin nodded, but inside, his mind was racing with new thoughts. Thoughts no Nuri should have. That evening, Ta-Jin entered the habitat. Han and Maru were sitting by the small fire pit outside the cabin. "Dr. Ta-Jin," Han said, "we haven't seen you for days." "I have been busy," Ta-Jin said. He sat down across from Han. Maru immediately came to him, putting his head on Ta-Jin's knee. Without thinking, Ta-Jin stroked the dog's head. The fur felt soft under his fingers. Maru's eyes closed happily. "You're different," Han said, watching this. "When you first came here, you wouldn't touch Maru." "I am changing," Ta-Jin admitted. "This is not good for a Nuri." "Why not?" Han asked. Ta-Jin explained about the Nuri, how they had removed emotions from their culture thousands of years ago, how they valued only logic and science. "That sounds lonely," Han said. "Loneliness is an emotion," Ta-Jin replied. "We do not feel it." "But you're feeling something now," Han said. "I can see it." Ta-Jin looked down at Maru, who had fallen asleep with his head still on Ta-Jin's knee. "Yes," he said quietly. "I am feeling." Han smiled. "That's not a bad thing." "It is for me," Ta-Jin said. "The collective has ordered me to return you to Earth in 10 days. Han's face lit up. "Really? We can go home." "You can," Ta-Jin said. "They want to keep Maru for further study." Han's smile disappeared. No, absolutely not. I won't leave without him. You may not have a choice, Ta Jin said. The collective's orders are final. Then help us, Han said. You saved Maru once. Save him again. Tai Jin looked at the sleeping dog. Something was changing inside him. Breaking open. Years of Nuri training were cracking, revealing something older underneath. Something that felt both new and ancient at the same time. I will try, Ta Jin said, surprising himself. But I need to understand why I feel this way. Why I care about a simple earth animal. That night, Ta Jin did not return to his quarters. Instead, he went to the ship's old data archives. He searched through records of Nuri history, looking for answers. What he found would change everything. Ta Jin worked through the night. The ship's data archives were vast and old. Many files had not been opened in thousands of years. He searched for information about Nuri history, about why they had no emotions. Access file. Genetic Modification Project 7K9, he told the computer. The screen filled with ancient text. Ta Jin read quickly, his eyes growing wider. What he found shocked him. Long ago, the Nuri had not been cold and logical. They had been much like humans, with strong emotions, but their emotions had led to wars and fighting. To stop this, Nuri scientists had changed their own DNA. They had removed the parts that controlled emotions. Over many generations, Nuri became logical beings who never felt joy, sadness, love, or hate. But there was more. Much more. The files showed that Nuri and humans shared a distant ancestor. Both species had come from the same source, created by an even older race that had seeded many planets with life. Humans had kept their emotions. Nuri had lost theirs on purpose. This cannot be true, Ta Jin whispered. But deep inside, he knew it was. The next morning, Ta Jin entered the habitat. He looked different. His movements were less stiff. His eyes showed something new. Worry. Han, he said quickly, I must show you something. He took out a small device and projected images in the air. They showed DNA strings of humans and Nuri. These look almost the same, Han said, confused. They are, Ta Jin explained. Humans and Nuri share ancestors. We are related. Han stared at him. Are you saying humans and your people are family? In a distant way, yes, Ta Jin said. But long ago, my people changed themselves. We removed our emotions to stop violence. It worked, but we lost something important. The ability to love, Han said. Yes, Ta Jin agreed. But the change was not perfect. The genes for emotions still exist in Nuri DNA, just turned off. Being around you and Maru has awakened mine. As they talked, Maru lay nearby, watching them both. His ears perked up at his name. That's why you're different, Han said. You're feeling things. Yes, Ta Jin admitted, and it is forbidden. If the collective learns the truth, they will see it as a disease. They will try to fix me. Fix you? Han asked. You mean turn off your emotions again? Or worse, Ta Jin said. They fear emotional contamination more than anything. Han looked at Maru, then back at Ta Jin. So what will you do? Before Ta Jin could answer, a voice spoke from the habitat door. He will follow orders, Dr. Sumai said, walking in. As all Nuri do. Ta Jin stood quickly. Sumai, how long have you been listening? Long enough, she said. You have accessed forbidden files. You speak of emotional awakening. These are serious violations, Ta Jin. The files are not forbidden, Ta Jin argued. They are just old. The collective has hidden our true history. For good reason, Sumai said. Emotions led our ancestors to near extinction. Maru got up and walked to Ta Jin's side, pressing against his leg as if offering support. Without thinking, Ta Jin placed his hand on the dog's head. Sumi's eyes narrowed at this gesture. I see the animal has affected you deeply. This confirms the need for immediate action. What will you do? Ta-Jin asked. I have already called Inspector Quan, Sumai said. The collective's timeline has changed. The human returns to Earth tomorrow. The animal will be placed under my care. No, Han said, stepping forward. I'm not leaving without Maru. You have no choice, human, Sumai said coldly. As they argued, Ta-Jin looked down at Maru. The dog looked back at him with complete trust in his eyes. In that moment, Ta-Jin understood what humans meant by love. It wasn't logical. It wasn't scientific, but it was real. And it was worth fighting for. There is another choice, Ta-Jin said suddenly. Both Han and Sumai turned to look at him. What choice? Sumai asked. One I never thought I would make, Ta-Jin said. His voice was no longer flat. It had emotion now, determination. Maru's tail began to wag, as if the dog knew what Ta-Jin was thinking before he said it. You cannot fight the collective, Dr. Sumai said. Her voice was still flat, but her posture had changed. She stood taller, ready for trouble. I am not fighting the collective, Ta-Jin replied. I am questioning their methods. This is allowed in scientific research, not when it involves emotional contamination, Sumai said. She touched a small device on her wrist. Inspector Quan will be here soon. Do not make this worse, Ta-Jin. Han moved closer to Maru, putting his hand on the dog's back. Maru growled softly, sensing the tension in the room. What happens now? Han asked. Before anyone could answer, the habitat door opened again. Inspector Quan entered with two tall Nuri guards. Their gray faces showed no expression, but their eyes were cold. Dr. Ta-Jin, Quan said. Dr. Sumai has reported serious concerns. You have accessed forbidden historical files. You show signs of emotional response. These violations cannot be ignored. The files were not marked forbidden, Ta-Jin argued, and what I found raises important questions about our society. We have lied to ourselves about our own history. The past is irrelevant, Quan said. What matters is the stability of our society now. Emotions threaten that stability. Quan turned to the guards. Take the human to the return shuttle. Prepare him for memory wiping before return to Earth. Memory wiping? Han asked, fear in his voice. You're going to erase my memories. Standard procedure, Quan said. You will not remember us or this place. You will be given false memories of a camping trip. And what about Maru? Han asked, though he already knew the answer. The animal stays for further study, Quan said. He looked at Maru with cold scientific interest. Its response to separation will be documented. One guard moved toward Han. Maru barked loudly, placing himself between Han and the guard. Maru, no, Han said. Don't make them hurt you. Ta-Jin watched this scene with growing emotion. The Nuri had taught that emotions were weakness, but what he saw now was strength. The dog, protecting its friend without thought for itself. The human, caring more for the dog's safety than his own. This was not weakness. This was something powerful. Stop, Ta-Jin said. Everyone looked at him. I cannot allow this. Quan's face remained blank, but his voice hardened. You have no authority here, Dr. Ta-Jin. Your judgment is compromised by emotional contamination. My judgment is clearer than ever, Ta-Jin said. The Nuri are wrong about emotions. They do not make us weak. They give us strength, purpose. Dangerous talk, Quan said. Guards, restrain Dr. Ta-Jin. He will also require evaluation and memory correction. The second guard moved toward Ta-Jin. Without thinking, Ta-Jin stepped back, toward Han and Maru. The human and dog leave together, Ta-Jin said firmly. I have seen their bond. Breaking it would be cruel and unnecessary. Necessity is not the question, Quan said. Scientific protocol is all that matters. The guard reached for Ta-Jin. Something snapped inside the scientist. In all Nuri history, no Nuri had ever raised a hand against another. Violence had been removed from their nature along with emotion. But Tajin was changing. He pushed the guard's arm away. Everyone froze in shock. He touched the guard. Sumai whispered, "Physical aggression. The contamination is worse than I thought." Kwan's eyes narrowed. "This proves my point. Emotions lead to violence. Dr. Tajin is no longer Nuri. He is a threat." The guard pulled out a small silver device. "Memory wipe and emotional suppression for all three," Kwan ordered. "Maximum strength. The dog will be placed in deep stasis for transport to Nuri Prime." Tajin knew what this meant. Deep stasis would leave Maru alive but frozen, to be studied like a specimen. Memory wiping would erase everything that made Han who he was, and emotional suppression would kill the new feelings growing inside Tajin himself. "I won't let you," Tajin said. He looked at Han, then at Maru. The dog stared back with complete trust. In that moment, Tajin made his choice. Tajin moved faster than anyone expected. He pressed a button on his wrist device. Suddenly, all the lights in the habitat went dark. Emergency lights came on, casting everything in a dim red glow. "System override initiated," said a computer voice. "Security protocols disabled." "What have you done?" Kwan demanded, his flat voice rising slightly. "I created a backdoor in the ship's systems weeks ago," Tajin said, "just in case." In the red light, Tajin grabbed Han's arm. "We must go now," he whispered. "Follow me." Maru stayed close to Han's legs as they moved toward a small door at the back of the habitat, a maintenance entrance that Tajin had never shown them before. The guards moved to follow, but Tajin pressed another button. The main habitat door slammed shut, trapping Kwan, Suma, and the guards inside. "This is rebellion," Kwan's voice called through the door. "The punishment is severe. We don't have much time," Tajin told Han as they hurried through narrow corridors. "The ship has escape pods, but they will be guarded." "What's your plan?" Han asked, breathing hard as they ran. "The research shuttle," Tajin said. "It's small but can reach Earth. I used it to collect you originally." They turned a corner and faced two more Nuri guards. Without hesitating, Tajin touched his wrist device again. The corridor lights flashed brightly, temporarily blinding the guards. Tajin led Han and Maru past them. "The shuttle bay is just ahead," Tajin said. The large door to the shuttle bay was locked, but Tajin's override codes worked. The door slid open. Inside was the small shuttlecraft that had brought Han and Maru to the ship. "Get in," Tajin ordered. "Quickly." Han climbed into the shuttle with Maru right behind him. Tajin went to a control panel and began typing rapidly. "Outer doors opening in 10 seconds, the computer announced. "Warning, proper departure protocols not followed. Hurry," Han called to Tajin. "They're coming." Through the shuttle bay doors, they could see more guards running toward them. Tajin finished his work at the panel and jumped into the shuttle. The door sealed behind him. "Hold on," he told Han and Maru. "This will not be smooth." The shuttle's engines powered up. Outside, the guards were almost at the shuttle bay door. 5 seconds to outer door opening. The computer said, 4, 3. The guards entered the shuttle bay, weapons drawn. 2, 1. The large outer doors of the shuttle bay opened to space. With a burst of power, Tajin launched the shuttle out of the bay. The sudden movement threw Han and Maru against their seats. "We made it," Han said. "Not yet," Tajin replied. "They will pursue us." The shuttle zoomed away from the main ship, heading toward Earth. Tajin piloted skillfully, his 6-fingered hands moving quickly over the controls. "Look," Han pointed at a screen showing behind them. 2 smaller craft had launched from the main ship. "Pursuit vessels," Tajin said. "They are faster than this shuttle." "What do we do?" Han asked. Before Tajin could answer, Maru barked. The dog was looking out a small window, tail wagging slightly. "What is it, boy?" Han asked. Tajin looked where Maru was looking. "The asteroid field," he said. "Clever dog." He turned the shuttle toward a dense field of floating rocks. The pursuit vessels followed. "This is dangerous," Tajin warned, "but they will not expect it." The shuttle entered the asteroid field. Huge rocks floated all around them. Tajin flew carefully between them. The Nuri pursuit vessels stayed close behind. "They're gaining on us," Han said, watching the screen. One of the pursuit vessels got too close to an asteroid. It scraped against the rock, spinning out of control. "One down," Tajin said, "but the other is still following." The remaining vessel was catching up. Suddenly, Maru barked again and jumped toward the front window. He was looking at a very narrow gap between two large asteroids. "No," Tajin said, understanding the dog's suggestion. "Too narrow. We won't fit." Han looked at Maru, then at Tajin. "Trust him," Han said. "He knows things sometimes." Tajin hesitated, then nodded. He turned the shuttle toward the narrow gap. The pursuing vessel followed. "Hold on," Tajin said again. The shuttle barely squeezed through the gap. Behind them, the pursuit vessel tried to follow but was too large. It crashed into the asteroids in a flash of light. "We made it," Han shouted, hugging Maru. "Good boy. Good boy." Tajin guided the shuttle out of the asteroid field. Earth was visible now, a blue-green ball in the distance. "We're going home," Han said, looking at his planet. "You are," Tajin corrected. "I can never go back to the Nuri now." Han put his hand on Tajin's shoulder. "You can come with us," he said. "Stay on Earth." The shuttle flew toward Earth, getting closer by the minute. Tajin worked at the control panel, his fingers moving quickly. "What are you doing?" Han asked. "Sending a message," Tajin replied, "to all Nuri ships and colonies." "Won't that help them find us?" Han asked, worried. "Maybe," Tajin said, "but this is important, more important than our escape." Tajin connected his personal data device to the shuttle's communication system. On the screen, files began to transfer, the ancient records he had found about Nuri history, about their shared ancestry with humans, about how they had removed their emotions through genetic engineering. "I am sending the truth," Tajin explained. "For thousands of years, the collective has hidden our history. They told us emotions were always bad, always dangerous. But that was a lie." "Will your people listen?" Han asked. "Some will," Tajin said. "Some will question. That is how change begins." Tajin added something else to the message, recordings from his research, videos of Han and Maru together, of their bond, of Maru helping them escape, and finally of Tajin himself speaking directly to his people. "Fellow Nuri," he said into the recorder, "I have discovered that emotions are not weakness. They give strength, purpose, and meaning. I have learned this from a human and a dog, two beings our science would call simple and inferior, but they have taught me what our ancestors knew before we changed ourselves. Love is not a flaw in our design. It is essential to who we are meant to be." When the message was complete, Tajin sent it. It would travel faster than their shuttle, reaching all Nuri before they reached Earth. "Now we land," Tajin said. "Where should we go?" "My cabin in the woods," Han suggested. "It's remote. Safe." Tajin nodded and set the course. The shuttle entered Earth's atmosphere, shaking slightly. Maru whined, not liking the bumpy ride. Han held him close. "Almost there, boy," Han said softly. "Almost home." The shuttle landed in a clearing not far from Han's cabin. It was night just like when Tajin had first come to Earth, but everything was different now. They walked through the forest to the small wooden cabin. It was exactly as Han had left it weeks ago. He opened the door and turned on a light. "It's not much," Han said, "but it's home." Maru ran inside, happy to be back in familiar surroundings. He sniffed around, then jumped onto a worn couch, making himself comfortable. "Home." Tajin repeated the word. He had never thought of his quarters on the research ship as home. It was just a place to rest between work periods. This small cabin, with its simple furniture and warm feeling, seemed more like a home than anywhere he had been. "You can stay here," Han said, "as long as you need to. The Nuri will look for me," Ta-Jin warned. "I have broken many rules." "We'll deal with that if it happens," Han said. "For now, you're safe." Days passed, then weeks. No Nuri ships appeared in the sky. Ta-Jin began to relax. Han taught him about life on Earth, how to cook food, how to chop wood for the fire, how to enjoy simple things like watching birds or feeling rain on his skin. And Maru taught him too. The dog showed him how to play fetch, how to enjoy long walks in the forest, how to nap in the warm sun. Small joys that Nuri science had never valued, but that now filled Ta-Jin with happiness. One day, Ta-Jin received a signal on his communication device. It was from the Nuri Collective. "What do they say?" Han asked, seeing Ta-Jin's surprised face. "My message spread quickly," Ta-Jin said, reading the report. Many Nuri began asking questions, demanding answers. Some have even started experimenting with emotional expression. "The collective is in chaos. Is that good or bad?" Han asked. "It is necessary," Ta-Jin said. "Change is never easy, but sometimes it is needed." The message also said that Ta-Jin was no longer considered a criminal. He was free to return to Nuri society if he wished, to help guide this new period of change. "Will you go back?" Han asked quietly. Ta-Jin looked at Han, then at Maru, who was sleeping peacefully by the fireplace. The dog's chest rose and fell gently with each breath. "No," Ta-Jin said finally. "My place is here now." He knelt down beside Maru and gently stroked the dog's soft fur. Maru opened his eyes sleepily, looked at Ta-Jin, and thumped his tail against the floor in happiness. "This is where I learned to feel again," Ta-Jin said. "This is where I want to stay." In that moment, looking at the sleeping dog who had changed everything for him, Ta-Jin finally understood the strangest and most powerful human emotion of all: love. And it had all started with a simple dog.